This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com. This episode of Sketchup, a 3D Toolbox, is brought to you by 3D Connection, makers of the Space Navigator. To learn more about them, visit their website at www.3dconnection.com. Hey there everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sketchup, a 3D Toolbox. I'm your host Cameron Harris, and this is episode number 30. Now today we're going to continue our work on the kitchen by doing some overhead cabinets and a little island/bar thing in the middle. This is going to be pretty interesting because the island bar is actually going to be at an angle, not at a right angle, it's actually going to be at a diagonal. And that's something we haven't played with before. So let's get right into it. Alrighty, so here's our kitchen as we left it in our last episode, and what we're going to do today is we're going to add some cabinets above the countertop on this wall, and we're going to add a diagonal bar island kind of thing right here. Now we're going to start with the above counter cabinets. Now the first thing that I always do when I'm modeling something like furniture or cabinets is I go online and I find out what the typical dimensions are for something like this, and I found that a typical above counter cabinet is about 30 inches tall, 12 inches deep or 1 foot deep, and usually are in about 2 foot wide segments. And you'll remember that when we modeled our cabinets down here, we modeled them in 2 foot wide segments, so that's perfect. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to put a guideline, because remember these are going to go above the countertop. So I want to put a guideline so that I know how high above the countertop they're going to be. And according to my research, that's about 18 inches typically. Now, usually that would be 18 inches from this countertop right here, but if I drew my guideline here, it wouldn't be right up against this wall, which is what I want. So I'm actually just going to start at this backsplash right here. It's a difference of a few inches, but, you know, that won't hurt anyone. 18 inches tall, and there's my guideline. Now, what I'm going to do in this case is I'm actually going to go ahead and draw a rectangle that's going to be my first unit of cabinet. Now I could just start here and draw a rectangle, but the rectangle tool unfortunately snaps to whatever face it's drawing up against. I can't get it to go out in 3D exactly as I want it to. Now that's fine. There's still a way to do what I want, and that's just using the line tool to draw this manually. So I'm going to start right at the edge of this wall where my guideline and that wall line intersect. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to hit the left arrow key to lock myself into the green axis. And remember, the cabinets are 1 foot deep. So I'm going to go 1 foot. Good. And now I'm going to lock myself into the red axis by hitting the right arrow key. Now I'm locked in that axis. 2 feet. And then I'm going to go green axis. Go back to the wall. There we go. Perfect. So that's going to be the base of my cabinet. I'm going to then use the push-pull tool and pull this up 30 inches. There we go. So that's going to be the first unit of my cabinet, and because this wall back here is 10 feet wide, you see the tape measure tool says it's 10 feet, I should be able to fit 5 of these 2 foot wide cabinets in here just perfectly. So now it's time to start adding the details. I'm going to go ahead and delete my guideline there. I'm just going to work on this one cabinet first, and then once it's finished, I'll duplicate it across and then join them all. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. Now remember, when we did these cabinets down here, we did a pretty simple version. We just did basically a solid L shape and then added the doors and the drawers to the front of it. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're actually going to, before we add the doors to the front, we're actually going to add some real shelves so that we'll be able to actually open these up and see inside. That's an optional step, but it does add a nice little bit of detail. So I'm going to show you how you can do that. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is select this front face here, and I don't want the shelves to be this entire face because that would be kind of weird. We need to have a little bit of a gap, a little bit of a border all around just to kind of be the frame of the cabinet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the offset tool and I'm going to offset 1 inch in here. So now I have this thing here that I can push and pull back and still have my frame. But I'm not going to push it back yet. I'm going to first do mark where my shelves are going to go. So where you put your shelves is really entirely up to you. I'm going to use my tape measure tool and draw some guidelines here. I'm going to go maybe a foot up here. Maybe not a foot, maybe 9 inches. Let's try that. That looks about right. 9 inches, and then I'll draw another guide up a 1/2 inch. So that'll be where my first shelf is. And then I'll go up maybe another 9 inches. And another 1/2 inch. That looks pretty good. 2 shelves I think is plenty. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the line tool and just trace on this interior section those guidelines. And I'll show you why you want to do this before you push your section back in a minute. Now, before we move on, I want to get rid of these guidelines here, but I've got quite a few of them here. So I'm going to save myself some time and go up to Edit, Delete Guides, and that gets rid of all those guides there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the Push-Pull tool, and I'm going to push these guys back individually. Now, I could just go all the way back, but if I did that, I basically have a big frame. The cabinets don't have any back, it's just open to the back wall. That looks a little bit strange. So instead, I'm going to push these back 11 inches, because remember the cabinets are 12 inches deep, so if I push these back 11 inches, I'll still have a 1 inch back right here. And I'm going to do the same thing to the rest of these. And you see that now, because we drew those lines before we pushed it back, those lines are still there. The shelves are just about perfect. So now the next step is to do some doors for these. And I think I'm going to actually do 2 doors, kind of a double door kind of thing. That'll be interesting. Now before I do the doors, because the doors are going to be separate from the cabinet, where we want them to be separate, I'm going to go ahead and triple click on this and group it. There we go. So now the doors won't stick to it like they would if it was ungrouped. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my guidelines, and I'm going to add a 1/2 inch border right here. Not exactly a border, but a guideline. I don't want to go a whole inch because I don't want my doors to just start at the where the holes are. I want my doors to kind of start a little bit before that, and I don't want my doors to go all the way out to the edges because I want a little bit of a gap between them and where the cabinets end. So I'm just going to do these. Remember, these are going to be double doors, so this door is only going to cover this half, so I don't need to worry about this side yet. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw one more guide. Starting at this edge here, I'm going to come out like this, and I'm going to make it 1 foot. And the reason I made it 1 foot is because, remember, these cabinets are 2 feet wide. So 1 foot puts this guide right in the center. So I'm going to have my door, this one door, start here and go all the way down to here, right at the center. That's where they're going to meet. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool, start right there, and go all the way up to there. Now at the moment it's looking a little bit weird because this face is right up against the other faces, the lines are showing through. So the first thing I'm going to do is use the push-pull tool and pull it out 1/2 inch. There we go, that's making a little bit more sense now. And then I'm going to go ahead and delete the guides again. Clean it up a little bit. So that's very nice. Now we could just leave it like that, but remember, we did this cool styling stuff, this little detail work on our cabinets down here. I'm going to do the same thing up here, just so that they match. So I'm going to select this front face here, and if you don't remember the technique that we used to create this effect right here, look on the last episode, episode 29, and that's where I show you how to do this. But I'm just going to do a quick recap for you here real quick. I'm going to use the offset tool, F key for the offset tool, and I'm going to offset this guy 2 inches. Actually, not even 2 inches. I'm going to start with just 1 inch because these are smaller. 1 inch, and then I'm going to do the same thing, another inch. So now we have two of these outer rings here, and then one center. Then I'm going to use the push-pull tool, and on the center two, I'm going to push them back 1/4 of an inch each. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this center face here, double click on it to select it and its lines, and I'm going to switch to the move tool. And then normally when I use the move tool, I can just move it around in these two dimensions, but if I lock it into, in this case I believe it's the green axis, it might be the red axis for you depending on how your model is oriented, but if I lock it into the correct axis, there we go. When I pull it out now, you see that those lines come with it, and if I just pull it out and snap it to here, just pull it out 1/4 of an inch, that's what I end up with. It automatically extrudes those lines and everything. You could model that manually, but this is way easier to do. So I'm really liking that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and group, triple click on the door, make group, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically copy it over to the other side. So I'm going to use the move tool, M for the move tool, hit the option key, so that way I get that little plus symbol and I want to drag a copy of it, and I'm going to grab it by this outer corner right here, and I'm going to snap that out, that little outer corner, to that edge of the door right there. So that way we've got some really nice double door cabinets. Now, you might be wondering, well, I can't see the shelves. Why did we go through the trouble of doing that? Well, if the doors are closed like this, it's true, you can't see the shelves. But if you use the rotate tool, just hit Q for the rotate tool, you can actually select these doors and open them up like this. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'll select this door here, and I'll go ahead and just open it up slightly, like that. Just so you can kind of see inside, you can see that those have shelves in them and everything. It's kind of just a nice little bit of detail. Makes it really nice. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on one of the doors, hold down the Shift key, and select the other door and the actual cabinet. So I've selected all three individual parts. And now I'm going to right click on them and choose Make Group. Now I could choose Make Component, but if I made it a component, they would be very individual, and I don't actually want them to be individual cabinets. Once I drag the copies over, I actually want to meld them all together. And I'll show you how you can do that in a second. For now, I'm just going to group them to make it easy to drag copies. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy over this cabinet right next to itself. So I'm going to use the Move tool, hit the Option key to switch it to the Copy tool, and I'm going to move it over like this, and I'm going to go ahead and enter 2 feet because these are 2 feet wide. There we go. Now, you'll remember a few episodes back we talked about multiplying and dividing, where if you've just copied something over, you can immediately afterwards, after you've just entered the custom value, you don't deselect or anything. You don't click anything else. If you hit either the star key or the slash key, you can multiply, star key, or divide, slash key, copies of what you've just done. Now, if this is making no sense to you, don't worry. It's kind of a weird concept. Go back and watch the episode that we did on multiplying and dividing, then come back and watch this. I do a much better job of explaining it in that episode. For now, just take my word for it that if you hit the star key or the asterisk key, sometimes people call it that, hit that key, and then in this case I'm going to go times 4. It'll multiply it over. And what's really cool about that is that just saves you a ton of time rather than having to go copy, drag, copy, drag, copy, drag, copy, drag. Just star 4, bingo, you're done. So now we've got those cabinets. They fit in perfectly. And now the last step is you'll notice that up here we've got these lines because these cabinets are still individual units. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually shift click on all of these cabinets to select them all. And then I'm going to explode the groups. Right click and choose explode, and that ungroups them all. So now I've got the doors as their own thing and these cabinet units as their own thing. I'm getting in there, I'm getting closer. Now at this point I don't care about the doors. They can be their own separate thing, that's fine. I care about these back cabinet portions here. I can't meld them together yet because the cabinets are still their own groups. So I'm going to right click on all of these back cabinet pieces and explode them. And now you can see they're in the raw line and face mode. So now I can edit these as one big chunk. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the eraser tool, and I'm going to swipe all across this front here, get rid of all those lines, and now that's like they're one big seamless piece. I'm going to do the same thing underneath, like that. Much better. And finally, these extra lines in between the doors right here. Get rid of that one, that one, that one, and that one. Perfect. So now these are essentially one big long cabinet unit instead of 5 multiple, individual ones. We're going to triple click on that, choose Make Group, and then I'm going to go ahead and shift click on all the doors as well, and choose Make Group. So now all of that stuff is just one big seamless unit. And you can see that having the doors partially open and seeing in the shelves really adds a nice little bit of depth to it, nice little bit of detail. And you might be wondering, why didn't we have these cabinets go across this wall too? Well, I mean, you could, but in my case, I had these windows here. And if I had these cabinets all the way across there as well, they would cover up parts of the windows, and it would just get pretty complex. I'm fine with having them just on this one wall. So I think that looks really great. Now, next up, we're going to do a simple little bar at an angle. But before that, I want to thank the people who make this show possible, 3D Connection. Now, by now, I'm sure you've heard me gush about the Space Navigator before. This thing is just awesome. Best way to navigate in SketchUp, in my opinion, hands down. And there's all kinds of reasons. I mean, it's more ergonomic, it's smoother, it's more intuitive, but also, it's just easier to navigate in SketchUp. With keyboard shortcuts, you're kind of spinning around in these really jerky and fast movements, and it's not always easy to remember where you are. Sometimes you can get disoriented pretty quickly with the keyboard shortcuts and the mouse movements, and you can pretty quickly lose where you are in your model. But with the Space Navigator, everything is just in one fluid motion, so you don't lose yourself in your model. There's none of this weird jerky movements or, twisting around 360 degrees in half a second, and then you're trying to figure out where you're pointing now. Just one big, long, smooth, fluid movement, and it just makes it so much easier to remember where you are in your model. It's really just fantastic. Be sure to check out their website at www.3dconnection.com. They've got some cool demo videos up there of how this thing is used and what makes it so great. And I want to thank them so much for their support of this episode of SketchUp, a 3D toolbox. So let's talk about this bar now. Now, the bar is going to be pretty much the same height as the cabinets back here, but with one big difference. It's going to be in the middle of the room, not up against a wall, and it's going to be at an angle. Now, that's going to be a little bit tricky because we want to make sure that we have it positioned far enough away from all of this stuff that you can still get past it on either side. But also, we got to make sure that it's not too far away, and it's not too wide and not too skinny. So we're going to have to experiment a little bit here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is remember that these kitchen cabinets is what we're basing this off of. And these kitchen cabinets are, let's see here, in terms of depth, they are 2 feet deep. They're 2 feet wide, so we'll want to do it in increments of 2. And lastly, they are about 3 feet high. So we'll make them 3 feet tall. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to make a quick guess here. I'm going to use the rectangle tool, and I'm just going to kind of guesstimate what a good size for this is going to be. We know it's got to be 2 feet deep, and in terms of width, it's got to be an increment of 2. So let's try making it maybe 6 feet wide, and then 2 feet deep. And then I'll go ahead and extrude this up 3 feet, like that. Good, that'll give us a nice, good starting point. Now, what I'm going to do now is we need to kind of just get it into position and see how it fits in the room. But the first thing we need to do is twist it so that it's at an angle. Now, we could use the rotate tool, but in this case, I actually prefer to right-click on it and make it a group, and then choose the move tool. Because the move tool, remember, you can move things, left and right and side to side and everything like that. But when you hover the move tool over a group, you get these little red plus signs right here. You get 4 of those on each face. And if you hover on the top one, you can rotate it. Just click on one of those plus signs and you can rotate it at whatever smooth point you want. Now, at this point, you'll notice our dimensions box down there says angle, and we're choosing all kinds of bizarre angles. I want this to be at exactly a 45-degree angle. So, at this point, it's just kind of, twirling all over the place. I could enter in a custom value, 45 degrees, but you'll notice these tick marks. The rotate tool has this, as well as this kind of move tool rotate cheat, I guess you could call it. These little tick marks in here are actually 15-degree increments. And if you just snap to it, you can see that at some point or another, there we go. You see the angle says negative 45. It could be plus 45 or whatever. But that's at exactly a 45-degree angle. If I click there, it snaps to it. I don't have to enter in any custom values at all. So that's really, really nice. And now I'm just going to kind of position myself above here like this. And I'm going to go ahead and use the move tool and move this into what I think is a good position. Let's try something like that. So at first glance, it seems to be fitting, well, okay. But look at this. If I go to the tape measure tool and just measure how much of a gap we have between here and here, we only have 2 feet between the cabinets here and the corner of this bar island thing. And 2 feet, that'll work, but that's pretty tight. I'd rather it be more like 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the move tool again, and I'm going to move it first 1 foot in this direction, and then another foot in that direction. And that seems like it's really far away, but actually not so much, because now you'll notice that when I use the tape measure tool, at the corners, it's about 3 feet on that side. Nice 3-foot gap, plenty of room to walk by. And over here you have pretty much the same thing. Yeah, 3 feet. So that is a good position for it. It can't really go any further back, otherwise you start to run out of space pretty quickly. So it's extending into the room quite a bit, but I'm actually fine with that amount. In some cases, with diagonals, it looks like you can move them in really tight, but really you need quite a bit of space. It looks like it's going to fit in the room pretty well in this case. In your case, with your room, you might find that you need to extend the room out a little bit, or kind of rethink maybe diagonal isn't the best way to go. But in this case, I think this is actually going to work out just fine. So at this point, it's just a matter of making it look similar to these cabinets back here, making it match. So the first thing I'm going to do is, you notice this little notch right here that these cabinets have. All kitchen cabinets have that. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to this unit right here. I'm going to go ahead and explode it. You have to make it a group to use that move tool, rotate tool cheat thing. But in my case, I find it easier to use that and then group it, rotate it, and then ungroup it when you're done. That's just me personally, though. And then this notch here is 2 inches deep, 3 inches tall. Perfect. So I'll just do a quick little rectangle here. There we go. Use the push tool and just slide it all the way back like that. And now got a nice little notch right there. Perfect. And that's pretty much all that I need to do for this guy. Oops. So I can go ahead and triple click on him now, and I'll make him a group. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the actual countertop. And for that, I'm going to use the rectangle tool again, and just, you'd think I'd be able to just trace right over this diagonal rectangle here, but the rectangle tool always goes at exactly right angles. It doesn't really handle diagonal rectangles very well, because it doesn't know how you want to rotate it. You can see that's just a little bit weird. So what I'm going to do in this case is actually just use the line tool and just retrace this top part here. And then I'll be able to use the push-pull tool. There we go. Pull it up an inch. There we go. So now I've got that. Now I'm liking that, but I'm going to, just like over on this side, you notice our countertop here extends out about 1/2 inch. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, just 1/2 inch. And now I can actually just double click on these faces, because if you double click with the push-pull tool, it does whatever transformation you just did. It does it to that face. So just double click and that extends it out another 1/2 inch there, another 1/2 inch there. And then lastly, on this side, I actually want this to kind of double as a bar. So I'm going to actually click once and drag this out about 6 inches. That'll give me a little bit more of an overhang, but then you could put some chairs right here and use it as some nice seating. So that's pretty cool. So I'll do that. And then the last thing I'm going to do is texture this the same as this tile over here. Now remember, switch to the B for the bucket tool. And I can't really remember where the texture that I used for this is in my color picker, so I'm just going to hold down the command key, or the control key if you're on a PC, and it switches to the eyedropper tool. I can sample that texture there, and just go ahead and paste in with the bucket tool. Remember to catch the underside as well. Just paste in that texture. I will leave this side over here lastly. Good, there we go. Keep running through walls here. There we go, that's very nice. And I kind of like how the tile's at an angle as well. It's pretty cool. And the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and triple click and group that. And the last thing we want to do is we want to add some doors and drawers to the front here. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, we're going to model these again. Well, no, we're actually not, because this is pretty much the same thing. This island thing is pretty much the same thing as these countertops over here in terms of size. We can just copy and paste these doors and drawers from over here and paste them onto this guy here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to select one of these units here, use the move tool, hit the option key, and drag out a copy. I'll lock it to the red axis there. And remember, because this has been grouped, we can actually hover over the top and we get those little red plus marks. And now I can rotate it, don't have to switch tools at all. And just snap to, there we go. It looks like about, well, let's see here. Got to figure out what exact angle we want. Looks like about 135 degrees is just about perfect. And now I'm going to go ahead and put it right up against the cabinet thing there. That looks just about right. And then I'll just push it back this way. Well, it's going to be a little bit tricky. So what I'm actually going to do is, once you go diagonal, things get a little bit more complex. And you got to kind of figure out how are the tools going to react. Some tools work very well in diagonal, others don't. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a guide 1/2 inch up like that, and then 1/2 inch over like that. Because remember, over on our other cabinets here, we have a 1/2 inch border all around the doors and drawers. So now I can just grab the door unit by this corner right here and just line it up with that corner like that. There we go, that's perfect. And then we just need another one. I'll show you how we can use the divide function. We just did the multiply function with these cabinet units up here. I'm going to show you how you can use the divide function over here. I'm going to draw another 1/2 inch guide right there. So that's where we want the far cabinet to be. So I'll just use the move tool, hit the option key, and drag over another copy of these drawers right there. Very good. And now, without doing anything else, don't click anywhere, don't deselect, don't do anything. We're going to divide by 2. I know it's weird. You would think just divide by 1, but remember, divide by 1 does nothing. Dividing by 2, /2, go. That puts one right in the middle because we just moved from here to here. Divide that by 2, you have a point right in the middle. So that is just about perfect. And I'll go ahead and, we've got these guides here, I'll go ahead and edit, delete the guides. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select the doors, the countertop, and the actual counter, and group them all so that they're one nice solid unit. And there we go. That's a pretty fantastic looking kitchen. So you can see that once you start modeling things at an angle, things get a little bit more complex. You have to put a little bit more thought into them than usual. But I hope that these techniques that we learned in this episode will help you out, and we'll be covering diagonal modeling a little bit more in the future. But until then, be sure to visit our website at www.harwoodpodcast.com. I'll have the show notes for this episode, a place where you can download the lesson file so you can follow along with the same model that I'm using here. And if you have any questions or comments for me about the show, you can send me an email at cameron@harwoodpodcast.com. I would absolutely love to hear from you guys. Until next time, I'll just say goodbye and good modeling.